This morning we heard in Fred Muir's sermon that there were 3 ways to get involved in multiracial, intergenerational, all of that work. And one of them was it falls in your lap, okay? That's what happened at First Unitarian in Wilmington. I'd like to stand up here and tell you it was a well-intentioned, thought out, part of our plan, part of our multiracial anti-oppression work, and anti-racism work. Well, that's just not the case. In February, this last February, a member of our church who is also a UU minister doing community ministry and also very involved in a nonprofit that she started that works with people coming out of the prison and into the community. Her agency is to work in helping them succeed and stay in the community, and her name is Reverend Paula Mariano. She did a sermon in February on the new Jim Crow and the age of innocence. The fact that we're all rather innocent, especially us white folks in a lot of these Unitarian churches, of really not being familiar with what's going on around us and in relation to mass incarceration. So Paula preached this sermon and did a plea or an invitation for those of us at First Unitarian to come with her and join with a church, the Mother Africa Union Church, which is in downtown Wilmington. Now, First Unitarian is in the suburbs. Let's just get that out there. First Unitarian is 99% white. Maybe if we can get some of those statistics, or maybe we're 97% white. We'll find out. But the point being, this was to be a partnership and enter into a dialogue with an African American church. And we were to discuss, now it was made clear that this was not going to be your ordinary book discussion. And it was set up, and Paula had been working in a lot of partnerships with the senior pastor at Mother Africa Union Church, the Reverend Dr. Lawrence Livingston. So they'd already been working on things in the community together. And so this partnership came together because of Paula and Reverend Livingston wanting this to happen. So the challenge was, okay, this is a study, plan, and action group. So if you're coming on board, it's not just to come and to talk about a book. So we began our meetings in April, and we met weekly until June to cover each chapter of the book. And Fran's going to address a little bit about some of the impact of that or some tips if you're getting ready to do this. And when we have our breakout, we can share more about our recommendations on how to do this and some of the things that happened and our emotional responses to it. I don't have time to go into a lot of that here. But I do want to say that we completed the study. We completed the study portion. And we alternated where we would have the meetings. The first meeting was in Wilmington at Mother Africa Union Church. There were about 10 of us from the Unitarian Church there, and there were about 35 from Mother Africa Union, maybe even 40 in those first few sessions. Then we met at First Unitarian the next week, and there were about 7 or 8 of us, and 30 that came to us from Mother Africa Union Church. And then, so back and forth. We read the book, we discussed it, we studied it. And then we morphed into our planning stage. And that started in June, and we've had 3 planning meetings. The 4th one's coming up next week. And numbers kind of start dropping off at that point for a variety of reasons. But this is where some really hard work begins. You've been doing some hard work in the discussion. And it is hard work because racism, you cannot discuss this book without discussing racism. You cannot discuss this book without discussing white privilege. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we are in the planning stage now, and we are working on what is it we want to do as a result of reading this book. And we basically have 3 priorities. And number 1 is to raise awareness in the community of the book, and not just the book, but of the issue of mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness. And there's a lot this is impacting communities of color in a horrific way. And I do think it's critical to really be well informed of this before you really start getting into planning and acting. So another, Michelle Alexander addresses some of these action plans in her book, but another one is to maybe work on banning the box in your community so that people don't have to check off on an employment application that they have been convicted of a felony, that kind of thing. And then the other one is looking at the impact of the drug courts in Delaware. We do have drug courts. They're very popular now throughout the country, but we really want to see what impact, how are those impacting people of color. And then the third one is prevention, really trying to do some youth programming and work with different youth organizations or start some programming so that youth can be informed about how all this works and hopefully prevent getting caught up in the trap of the new Jim Crow. Before I turn it over to Fran, I just want to leave you with two thoughts, and we can discuss this more in our breakout group. But I strongly encourage any Unitarian church, any Unitarian Universalist church, entering into the Common Read, which now, I think the last part of the summer, it was announced this is the Common Read promoted by the UUA. Do not do this by yourself. Please don't do it by yourself. Do enter into a partnership with a group of people of color, whether that's another congregation or an organization or whatever. It's critical that you do this. Otherwise, I don't think you'll get at some of the real issues. So I really think it's important because it really does, like I said earlier, have you deal with race, and we're not finished in dealing with that. I mean, that's an ongoing process. And also the white privilege. I learned things in that book that I did not know, and some of the chapters were so compelling and so sad to me, and I wondered, why did I know this? Well, I had no need to know it. It doesn't impact me. It doesn't impact my immediate community. I also think that's a reason why there were smaller numbers of us participating in this, because it's like it didn't really impact a lot of people in the congregation. They think. But when you discuss this, you do find there's ways this impacts all of us. And so I do encourage you to partner, and we'll tell you more about our partnership and the things that we've learned. But I definitely want you to hear from Fran to share her insights.
Hi. My kind of task is to kind of talk a little bit about lessons learned. And one thing I was thinking about a little bit was that in terms of young people saying, racism of the past and the stories of the past and marching and all of that, the new Jim Crow is really kind of the modern racism. It's kind of the colorblind racism. If you're going to read the book, one of the things we found was, particularly I think, when we met at Mother African Union Church, because we had a lot of people from the Wilmington community coming in. I think it's really important that you tell people, read the book, because it's not really about people think they know about the issue and, this drug war and stuff like that, but unless you read the book and read the statistics, you do not know about this. And even as an African-American person, I kind of have an idea about it, and it's the book kind of provides, because you say, oh, that's why that happened. And even in some of my personal stories, like I was aware that I have a 21-year-old son, and when he got a driver's license, for me as an African-American, that meant I needed to tell him, if you're stopped by the police, don't say anything. Just say, yes, sir. Get out of the car. Put your hands up. See, it's a very emotional issue for African Americans because it's our sons and our husbands and so on. And then also several years ago, my husband was stopped by the police. He was driving our van, and he was going around picking up families. This was on the ghetto in Wilmington, going around picking up families. My children were in the car. The police stopped him. He was right beside that church that he was at that time. And the policeman was yelling and yelling and yelling at him. And he just said, why are you yelling? And the policeman grabbed him out the car, ripped his shirt, maced him. And my husband was like, what are you doing? My husband's a big dark-skinned black man, and he was arrested and put in jail. And my children were left in the van with the ladies who were going to Bible study. And so this is a very emotional thing for me, and come to find out that they realized that he was sort of a prominent person in Wilmington. The mayor knew him and everything, so he got out of jail. He still got disorderly conduct charge. But so this is a very real thing. Even when you're not doing anything, you get caught in this. So it's important for people to read the book, because we had people come in who started talking about things, and they get us really, really off track if we're trying to do an actual social justice project and get something done. So you had people coming in and say, well, I don't care, I was just knocked over the head by somebody in the street, and I don't think you should let any of them out of prison. And that's not what we're talking about. This is very specifically about people who get swept up in drug sweeps, maybe have little or no marijuana on them, and their lives are ruined because they are put in prison for significant amounts of time for little or nothing. So that's one. And I think Paula Majorano from Janet's church, she suggested that one of the things you might want to think about doing is that after the first or second meeting that you close it, because as you begin to learn more about the issue and interact with each other and work on issues, new people coming who haven't experienced that bring you, they step you back. So you don't keep the momentum going forward. So that's another thing. And also, one of the things is, a lot of us that got together, we're really gung-ho. We want to do something to change this and move and get something done. We're very action-oriented. And I really think you need to take the time to study and understand the issue. And then we picked several issues like ban the box and the social education and things like that. I think you have to take time to research the issues. What laws exist in your state, what has been done before, so you're not repeating things, and also so you're not, because one of the issues we had, because we had a number of people who had gotten caught up in the social justice system, either as youth or something like that, and then they're fine, upstanding citizens for 5 or 6 years, they are on a job, and they get fired because somehow they opened their juvenile record. And so we were trying to get juvenile records closed. And we have a judge from the Unitarian Church who's on there. She said, they are closed. She said, we need to find out how is it they get a hold of the information. And we kind of discovered that it's that box. When you go for a job, you somehow, when you put in the application, you're authorizing them to look into your background. And so, we were almost ready to run out in one direction when we were kind of reined back in and said that's not really the issue or the legality that we're working on. So we have to be really, really patient for the research to find out what is really happening in the system, because it's a tricky system. I mean, it's designed to be sort of deceptive and, make it look good from the outside, like, of course you would want that to happen, and that's not really what's happening. And then the last thing I think is that you really have to take time if you're going to work in that. We did not design that in our group meeting, but you have to take time to address race. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. And we had some really tense meetings. One of the things that happened with our church is we have a gentleman. He's a white gentleman. He belongs to our church. And the reason why he kind of belongs to our church, I think, is he's a big executive in one of Delaware's big companies. And he's married to an African-American woman. He has tremendous pain. And I think because of the conversations he's had with my husband, I think I can say this without divulging any of his personal, but he's had tremendous pain on the fact that he's married to an African-American woman and he's a big corporate exec. And he truly came in there with a chip on his shoulder towards, I think you feel it, towards white folk. And he offended everybody. But I think we needed to maybe address the pain that everybody was carrying first, because these are hard issues. And one of my pet peeves too is I really hate that in America everybody says I'm not racist, and I think it's endemic. It's in our DNA. The slave forts in Africa were well established 10 years after Columbus bumped into America. That's how long we've been in this thing. And we don't just erase it easily, So we have to admit, and I think if you don't admit, yeah, I'm racist, what are my prejudices? What are my prejudgments of people? You can't ever get it out of yourself. So you have to say, yeah, I'm racist, and let me figure out what that means. What is it that I do? What do I, who do I prejudge? I don't like fat people. I don't like short people. What? I don't know. How do I feel about white people? What is my idea? What are my prejudgments of white people when I see a white person? So you have to sort of do that self-examination, and you have to admit it's there. Because in this country, you don't grow up. When you say, well, what did that person look like? You say, well, let's see, they were black, white, red, green. That's one of the first descriptors we always use. So it's there, and we have to address it. And I think the drama group was one good way of maybe doing something like that. But maybe design that into your interactions and say, how do we constructively get that pain out? Because I think for a lot of different people, it's manifests in different ways, and it'll interrupt your discussion and also any social action that may come from, reading the book.